Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our Monday Night Raw recap from the 1st of September. This is the edition that was in Paris, France, and, just off the back of a Clash in Paris event, got a lot of reaction for this particular show that we're going to be going through right here, right now, and just discussing everything that took place across the course of the show. So, let's open things up with how the show began, and that would be with main event Jey Uso. He would come on down to the ring, and he would basically be saying how he could have been stood in that ring as the new World Heavyweight Champion. But because of what took place at Clash in Paris, things didn't quite go the way for Uso. So he's obviously talking about Roman Reigns and the beatdown from the Vision, which took place after Roman's match against Bronson Reed, which Jey Uso came down to help Roman in the end. And Jey would reference that during this opening segment, basically saying how, you know what, maybe if he had actually listened to Roman Reigns and just focused on the World Heavyweight Championship solely, rather than helping his cousin, then maybe he would have been the World Heavyweight Champion now. So Jey's mind sort of a little bit, thinking about what could have been rather than what actually is. He would demand the Vision come on down to the ring pretty much straight away. But instead of getting the Vision, he would actually get LA Knight. So once Knight would get into the ring, he would have his own things to say to Jey Uso, basically blaming him for Seth Rollins still being the World Heavyweight Champion. There was a part of the matchup at Clash of Paris where there was a point where the three challengers had Seth Rollins down and they could have possibly put him through a table. They had the table set up, and Jey decided to dish out a couple of super kicks to Punk and Knight instead. And that plan sort of just evaporated. So Knight picks out that particular moment, saying we could have had Seth laid out and done, and it could have been just us three dealing between ourselves. He also refers to when he hit Seth Rollins with a BFT in the ring, obviously his finishing maneuver, and then Jey Uso was the one to actually break up that pin attempt. So again, blaming Jey for that particular situation. As Jey's about to respond, the Vision do finally arrive. So that's Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker. Knight basically just starts questioning the amount of brain cells that they both have. And after a little bit of back and forth, Bronson and Bron, they start to really gloat over their destruction of Roman Reigns, despite the crowd absolutely, serenading Roman Reigns at the time. This is the start of, obviously, this Paris crowd. Like we've seen over the past couple of shows with SmackDown, with Clash in Paris, they were loud as hell for the entirety of the show. We will probably talk about that a bit more as we go along with these segments that we're going to be discussing. But yeah, the Vision would remind everyone that Roman Reigns is actually in hospital at the moment, and Jey and LA Knight, they should only be concerned about one thing, and that Heyman is also in the hospital. But because he's there, there's nobody to sort of like advise them to, control themselves, to stop, to calm themselves down. They can just do what they want without any consequences, basically, is what they're saying. Bron and Bronson would issue then a tag team match for later on in the show with LA Knight and Jey Uso, which would be accepted straight away. So that would be our opening segment. We would then go into our first match of the show straight afterwards, which will see the Kabuki Warriors. That'll be Asuka and Kairi Sane. They'll be taking on the team of Judgment Days, Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez. So this was an opportunity for these two teams to really go at it, because there's been a little bit of back and forth between the two teams for a while now. And I think for the most part, it's been quite even. It's been a little bit of back and forth between these two teams, but I don't think the Kabuki Warriors have really had a chance to really just like take on the two without anything going on otherwise. And they actually got that chance here today. So it would be the Kabuki Warriors winning the matchup against Judgment Day. It wasn't the cleanest match. I will say there was a few little bits here and there that maybe could have been ironed out and sharpened up a little bit more, but they put on a decent opening contest, I suppose, just to get the crowd going. And it would be Asuka tapping out Roxanne Perez via the Asuka lock to get that victory. So I quite like the fact that Asuka went back to her Asuka lock, because the Empress attack I wasn't entirely fond of. I mean, Jada Parker uses something very similar in NXT, but I think Asuka, just because of her repertoire and her experience, I think just using the submissions that she's obviously been so accustomed to over the years, I think it's more suited to her. So it was great to see her go back to this. Hopefully that's going to be a prominent thing going forward. But yeah, the match, it could have been a little bit better than it was. It was a little disappointing, I think I would probably say, like, critically. But yeah, Kabuki Warriors with a big win over Judgment Day. That was very important for them nonetheless. Speaking of Judgment Day, we will continue with the faction. We would then have Finn Balor in action next, going 1-on-1 with Dragon Lee. Finn would be accompanied to the ring by J.D. McDonough. And I mentioned the crowd earlier on with Roman Reigns chanting. They were extremely loud for Finn Balor in this one, making like unique chants, just serenading him, singing along. And yeah, they continue to absolutely go crazy for the Prince. And it was a fun match between the two men. There was a point where JD McDonough would obviously be getting involved, as you would expect. A little bit of distractions here and there. But ultimately, in the end, it would be Dragon Lee who was on the top rope, and Finn Balor would sort of like catch him and like knock him down. That would offer a position where Finn could go for the coup de grace, and that would be the 1-2-3 to get the job done. But it was a decent matchup between both men. Crowd were electric for it. And yeah, not a bad one-on-one matchup with Finn Balor getting the win, which was very, very much appreciated by the French crowd. And then just the end of our first half here, we would then have a tag team match, 3 versus 3 in this one. It would be Penta, joined by the War Raiders, or a returning Ivar and Eric, taking on New Day and Grayson Waller, or as Wade Barrett was saying on commentary, New G'day. Will that stick? I probably don't think so, but it was a fun little thing from Wade Barrett, on the side anyway. But regardless of that, the matchup was pretty fun. It was quite high paced for a large part of it. Penta obviously bringing just utter charisma, as he always does. The War Raiders bringing a bit of energy back with them. It was nice to see them back in the ring again. It'd been a while. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how long it's been, but I think it's probably been at least 2 months or so, I want to say. It's been a while. But regardless of that, it would be Penta and the War Raiders getting the victory in the end over New G'day, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, it was just an opportunity for them to really showcase what they're capable of as this, makeshift trio for this particular matchup. But yeah, they've all got beef with New Day, so it made sense to go down this route. I don't think the Penta Destroyer is going to be cancelled anytime soon, despite the 26 signatures that Grayson Waller did get in order to try and cancel it. But alas, with the win for Penta and the War Raiders, it was just a feel-good moment for especially Eric and Ivar to be back in and to get a victory over a team they don't particularly like too much. But Nick, what did you make of our first half of Raw? Obviously, the fallout of Clash in Paris with LA Knight and Jey Uso there in the opening segment with the Vision. Roxanne Perez, Raquel Rodriguez losing out to the Kabuki Warriors. I know obviously you have a good interest in the women's tag team division, especially with the likes of Asuka and Kairi involved. Finn Balor and Dragon Lee, that crowd, I think, you just got to give props to them. They were absolutely electric for it. And then that mixed that 3-on-3 tag team match at the very end there of the first half. What did you make of it all? It was a fun start to the show.
Yeah, comparatively speaking to SmackDown right now, Raw just feels like it's on another level, and it's much more enjoyable to watch at the moment. And even with the very much rinse and repeat that we're getting with the Vision stuff, but even this week feels different. Not only because of the Paris crowd, obviously helps elevate everything, but also because we didn't ever get the complete Vision. Of course, I'm referring to Paul Heyman being in the hospital, and then Seth and Becky. I don't think they ever were out at the same time with Braun and Bronson. So it just felt like something a little different, which was very much, appreciated, and just felt, the entire episode felt fresh. But getting into the actual segments and matches, the LA Knight and Jey Uso stuff just feels like, yeah, they just can't really get on the same page. But in order to do so, they have to, beat Braun and Bronson in the main event. And that match is, kicked off, and that's or that match will main event, and that segment kicking off the show. That's the very much rinse and repeat, but ever so slightly different. But yeah, a little more on that later. Getting into the first match of the night, which Asuka and Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors, going up against the Judgment Days, Roxanne and Raquel. Yeah, this one was a little sloppy. Kairi and Roxanne a couple spots, and then Asuka and Roxanne a couple spots as well. So maybe just We've seen that with Kyrie, unfortunately, but Asuka very uncharacteristic of her. So maybe just yeah, I'm not sure. We'll just chalk it up to a one-time thing, I suppose. But what was interesting for me on this one was that nothing happened during the match and nothing happened after the match, or at least particularly in this scene, which was shocking in itself. They have the Judgment Day with no interference, and as you mentioned, it's been a while, so. Yeah, the Judgment Day kind of felt like they were kind of on their own for the most part tonight, which was also something a little different. But yeah, a big win for the Kabuki Warriors getting the win here, and yeah, a few more segments kind of going with that. It wasn't too long after this where we see Roxanne and Raquel in the back talking to Adam Pierce. And Roxanne is disappointed that she wasn't announced for that championship. And Adam Pierce tells her that, that's just how it is. And then Lyra Valkyria comes up and interrupts her asking about Bailey. And Adam really doesn't give her much of an update. And then she basically says, "Well, I need a match as soon as possible." So she gets a match with one of the Judgment Day members, and that of Roxanne and Raquel. So for whatever that's worth. And on that note, Adam Pierce did announce, kind of in between these segments here, that Vicaire will take on Io Sky at WrestlePalooza on September 20th to fill the new vacant Women's World Championship. So. I don't think that's a surprise by any means, but I think a lot of people probably thought that was going to be Rhea. And so I, for one, I will take Io over Rhea, and I think Io and yeah, I think Io and Vicaire will tear down the house at WrestlePalooza. Getting into the next match with Finn Balor and Dragon Lee, yeah, like you said, another Judgment Day member, and I thought this was a great contest that as we would expect from the two guys here, Dragon Lee and Finn, both kind of just doing their thing, with Finn getting the coup de grace to win. Yeah, you kind of hit it a bit. There are three levels I've noticed in this contest. We had a pretty likable level. France definitely loves Asuka. Then on another level entirely, you have Finn Balor. France really likes Finn Balor. And then the third one, the person that they love most, or at least on this show it seems, was AJ Styles. They went gaga for him. That was a fun segment, as they did last time. He put on an absolute barn burner here in Lyon, I believe it was. And before the next match, we also had another segment with Io, Asuka, and Kyrie. They're talking to, or Io is talking to Nikki Bella about how things haven't worked out well for them. Well, in particular, Io getting a rematch. She's congratulated by Nikki, but Nikki not happy with the way the match went yesterday, and as she should. Asuka comes up, and we see this several times throughout the night. Asuka tells Io that she shouldn't be talking to Nikki, and that she's happy to help her with Stephanie. And Io says, "I don't need your help." Asuka responds then with, "Like you didn't need help at SummerSlam." So whatever is going on between the Asuka and Io in particular, and Kyrie kind of being this trying to keep her foot in both camps is very, very awkward. Everyone plays their role very well here, and so that very interesting what's going on there. I just have no idea where it's going. And then yeah, the New Day and Big G going up against Penta and the War Raiders. Penta and the War Raiders is a combination of a team I never knew I needed, but this was a ton of fun. Extremely fast paced and just absolute chaos. With Penta yet again hitting that Mexican destroyer on Xavier Woods to get the win. But yeah, like I said last week, you kind of have to feel bad a bit for Penta. He was so close to that main event scene, and now he's kind of feuding, which was kind of a handicap feud. He's able to get people to help him week in, week out, but it just feels like, where's the end game here for Penta? I thought maybe it was to get Rey Fenix at one point, as much as they tried not to do that at the beginning. But and maybe that still is the end goal, but it's just struggle to kind of figure out where they're going. But in the meantime, we get matches like this that are entertaining, and the New Day is obviously very entertaining as well. So for this, it was a very entertaining match to end that first half of Raw. But yeah, and overall, very entertaining first half for Raw for me as well.
Yeah, very entertaining for sure, and the entertainment did not stop. I know you've already alluded to it a little bit from what you were just saying just then, but we would go on to our next match of the night, which would be for the Intercontinental Championship. This would be Dominic Mysterio putting his gold on the line, representing Judgment Day, up against that of AJ Styles. And like you mentioned, the crowd were unbelievable in this particular segment. There was a part just before the match took place where AJ would obviously make his way down to the ring during his entrance, and his music hadn't even stopped. I say his music hadn't stopped. I don't know if it did stop because you couldn't hear it. Literally, the crowd started to chant so loudly, absolutely loudly, that you genuinely could not hear the music. Like, I don't know if it was just me, but I physically could not hear it. So I had no idea whether they were still playing it or not, because they were absolutely serenading him. Ile Vermont going all around the arena as loud as physically possible by the sounds of it. I wish they had the the decibel levels that they had, especially in last year's programming in the bottom corner. I wish they had that, because it would be really interesting to see how loud this crowd really were. But yeah, they blew the building off, basically, in the end. It was incredible. But regarding the match itself, the crowd were loud throughout the match, and rightfully so. It was a pretty fun contest between both men. I think the Dominic Mysterio just continues to get better and better and better every time he's in the ring. AJ Styles, obviously one of the veterans of the industry, and just, utterly amazing every time he's in the ring. They were putting on a really good show between the two of them. AJ had a lot of offense going on. In parts, Judgment Day's Dominic Mysterio also had a lot going on. So yeah, it was a bit of a bit of an even thing of towards the grand scheme of things. But in the end, Judgment Day were banned from ringside, so we were thinking, okay, well, how's Dom going to get this done? If he can get it done, or is AJ Styles actually going to get the job done himself? AJ's looking to prepare for, I think, the Phenomenal Forearm. He's on the apron at the time. And he's got Dominic Mysterio basically just scuttering around the ring. He's down. He's not quite with it. And suddenly we get El Grande Americano on the outside distracting Styles. And he gets to a point where he manages to put the metal plate inside his mask. And then he delivers a headbutt to the midriff of AJ Styles. And obviously, what's Dominic Mysterio's finishing move? It's the frog splash from the top, which obviously impacts the area that AJ's just been headbutted by El Grande Americano. So a little bit of synergy there between the bits of offense from El Grande and Dom, and that would be enough after that frog splash from Mysterio to get the victory over AJ Styles and to hold on to his Intercontinental Championship. But yeah, it was a pretty fun match. I quite enjoyed it. The crowd made it just unbelievably entertaining as well, with their involvements throughout the contest. And El Grande Americano obviously, coming to the aid of Dom, as he's been talking to him in secret and whatever in the past few weeks. So obviously this is pretty much where they were headed with that, I'm assuming. And I guess now AJ Styles going to have to turn his attention to that of El Grande Americano for the time being. And maybe Dom goes on to something else now. But interesting for sure. And I bet the crowd were devastated by that result. Once we would move on from that particular matchup, we'd then go on to our next segment. And CM Punk, he'd been waiting for Seth Rollins to arrive at the arena for the entire show. He'd be waiting at the gates. Because apparently Seth hadn't arrived. There was a point just before this particular segment I'm about to talk about where Adam Pearce would find CM Punk backstage, basically saying that he has been told by several people that Seth Rollins is somewhere in the arena. Doesn't know where, but he's been told. CM Punk decides to take matters into his own hands. He goes down into the ring and he basically calls out Seth Rollins immediately. He says he's going to hijack the show and he'll stay in the ring until Seth arrives and faces him man to man. And he very much emphasized man to man here, which kind of made the next part a little bit predictable. Seth's music starts to play pretty much immediately after he says it. And instead of getting Seth Rollins, we get Becky Lynch, who is the man. So it made sense. She would head down to the ring. She'd basically tell Punk that he's got the man. Punk would basically go off and he basically starts saying that, Seth's a coward, before eventually he would look to leave the ring. Says he doesn't want anything to do with Becky. He wants Seth Rollins. Becky would order him to stay. She would actually demand him to do so, and would basically say how Seth has sacrificed more for this business than Punk will ever actually know he has. Becky goes on, continues saying stuff like, how for years the crowd chanted Punk's name during her matches instead of actually giving a damn about what she was doing in the ring. And then she starts to completely do a 180 on everything that happened a few years ago and says that she got herself to the main event of WrestleMania without the fans. It was nothing to do with them, and it was all down to what she was doing. She basically starts to say that her and Seth got the business to where it is today, before suggesting that Punk gets out of the way and how he doesn't fit in the vision. Punk quickly replies, saying that the vision is a bit blurry, before telling her that he's the best in the world, basically giving her a reminder, everything that he says all the time. He mentions all the recent places he's been to and how he gets chanted everywhere he goes, but he does say that, who he didn't see at any of those shows is Seth Rollins, wasn't at any of them. He goes on to say that Rollins hides behind the vision before saying that now he's hiding behind his wife. And he goes on to say that Rollins is a paper champion and how this beef between them, it will never be over. So moments later, Seth does eventually appear on the stage. He starts to order Punk to come up to him and say what he wants to say to his face. But Punk doesn't get to Seth because Becky's sort of like, moving side to side to stop him from actually getting past. Obviously, Punk doesn't want to do anything to Becky Lynch, which is fair. But Becky is more than happy to do stuff to Punk, so she would start to slap CM Punk around, gives him an immediate slap, and then just like a load of I don't know, playful, weird little slaps, whatever. Just to basically just toy with CM Punk. Quite interestingly, next, Punk would basically just stand there. Becky calls him pathetic, but then Punk says that she will regret putting her hands on him. And so obviously you can translate that to whatever you think it means. I have an idea of what I think it means. We might be getting somebody very close to CM Punk that could actually do something to Becky Lynch. But that's just a theory that I have in my head. But yeah, Becky would tell Punk to keep on walking as he would head backstage. Seth had long gone by this point. And then that would introduce us to our main event of the night, which would be the aforementioned tag team matchup. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed taking on Jey Uso and LA Knight, which obviously was built up at the very start of the show. Yeah, decent main event to be fair here. I think LA Knight and Jey Uso sort of playing off the effects from Clash in Paris, not quite 100%. And, they were taped up and bandaged up and whatever, and obviously battered and bruised. And, yeah, they sort of sold that in the early stages especially, then going into the late stages too. Bron and Bronson, yeah, they needed this. They needed a big victory as a tag team because I think naturally speaking, when these guys, they get to do their own thing, it tends to be that they probably end up losing the matches because obviously we saw Bronson Reed lose to Roman Reigns, and we've seen little things here and there. I think these guys had a match against Jay and Roman at SummerSlam and they lost that one as well. So naturally they do lose a bit more than I think they probably should do, to be honest. So this was a really important victory for them both in the end. And what makes it even better was that there was no shenanigans really involved here. It was just smart play from Bron Breakker, and he would hit a big spear to capitalize and get the victory. As the match comes to an end, they're of their division, they look to destroy everything in their path. They're hitting, spears afterwards and tsunamis on Jey Uso. LA Knight's been dealt with at ringside. He's done. And as the assault is sort of continuing, we get Jimmy Uso coming down to the ring with a chair, and he would come to the aid of his brother Jay. So Jimmy would look to basically just fend off Bron and Bronson. They would essentially just head out of the ring anyway. There wasn't really anything needed after that. But yeah, the steel chair in hand probably was a big deterrent for the two men, and they would escape and get away. So yeah, then it would be just Jimmy sort of consoling Jey Uso. I think if I heard it right, I'm pretty sure Jay said I need you or something along those lines. I can't do this by myself, something like that. So it does look effectively like we might be getting a reunited team of the Usos, going forward, maybe taking on Bronson and Bron of the Vision. So yeah, quite interesting development there. Maybe the Usos are back, and we'll have to wait and see what goes on. But Nick, what did you make of our second half? The Intercontinental Championship match, that crowd was electric and absolutely thunderous for this one, especially for AJ Styles. Punk and Becky's interaction was very interesting and telling, especially with that little tease at the end. Is it really a tease? Obviously, you have to, weigh it up. I'd love to hear where your head at is with that. And then the main event, Bron and Bronson getting a massive win. I'm sure you think the same thing there. And then possibly the reintroduction of the Usos as well, joining back together. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, the AJ Styles Dominic Mysterio match very much felt like a PLE kind of level, and the crowd certainly helped with that. Just AJ just standing there, and it just gave you a flashback of the last time he was in Lyon. That match, and it's something about AJ Styles this French crowd just loves. Um, but yeah, we need to bring WWE back to France at least once, or twice. I think would be great. More if you have time to do it. But yeah, this crowd just makes everything 10 times better. Yeah, but for the match itself, obviously it was great. I really thought AJ was going to get that title, though. I would be lying if I said otherwise. Feels like we've done this a few times, and it just felt like all the stars had aligned. This was going to be AJ's chance. But alas, it is not. El Grande Americano, we kind of seen Dom talk to him a few times over the last few weeks. And Fenn and JD being banned, which Fenn was very relieved to see, being there in spirit as he jokingly mocked Dom's comments from earlier. Maybe we'll get this one more time, as you kind of mentioned. It's hard to keep giving rematches to AJ, but he's also getting cheated out of each time, which obviously is why the Dirty Dom moniker exists. But I thought originally they were going to save that AJ Dom for WrestlePalooza. They seem to be pulling out the big stops, all the big stops for that. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what goes on from here. Yeah, I'm not as high on Dom as most people are, but I just really want to see AJ with a title again. It's criminal how long it's been since then, and you would also play nicely if Dom were to lose the IC title. You could give Finn a shot at the IC title. Seeing Finn and AJ going at a PLE for that IC title, I don't know about you all, but that works for me. But yeah, we'll wait and see. Moving on to the Becky Lynch and Punk. Yeah, it was interesting to see a woman and a man do a promo together. We don't get that a ton. So that was a nice dynamic, obviously, especially with the two giants, if you will, in terms of promos and mic ability. So this was something very different, refreshing. Yeah, and you were right. They did telegraph that a little too much. Sometimes I question what they think of us as the fans in whole, to think that we can't put some of these things together. But regardless, yeah, this was a fun segment, and that first hit that Becky landed looked like it almost like a punch on his jaw, and then the rest were obviously much lighter. I don't think that first one was intentional, but regardless, Punk took them in stride and didn't really you know, clearly frustrated by the whole event. But that was classic. That was classic heel work for Seth to come and stand at the top of the entrance and Becky to block him. I still don't 100% know if she's going to be a part of the Vision, but it does kind of feel like that is the case. And then, yeah, mentioning the crowd, obviously, chanting for who they think as you alluded to, maybe coming here, especially in Chicago. Punk is seen asking Pierce where SmackDown is. So it'll be interesting to see if we get that. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to jinx it. But a lot of people have been clamoring for that for a long, long time. And it does feel like maybe a WrestlePalooza level event match. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I think that would be crazy that we would actually get that matchup. So we'll have to wait and see. We also had some injury updates. We had Paul Heyman, I think a larynx contusion, and Roman with multiple rib fractures and is ruled out indefinitely. So kind of, I think, as we all kind of probably figured, after getting the tsunamis and spears, he's going to be out for some time. I would guess chill around Survivor Series, but we'll have to wait and see. And then, yeah, main event with Braun and Bronson going up against LA Knight and Jay. First of all, we got a clean finish for a match involving the Vision, so that was refreshing as well. And then obviously the Vision getting the win, which I think is rightful, in itself. LA Knight and Jay, as you mentioned, very much selling those injuries from Clash in Paris, and then after the match, very much taking out Jay and Jimmy coming to the rescue, if you will. I will say, first of all, Jimmy has been taken care of many times, trying to help people. So it was a bit interesting that maybe that Braun and Bronson, fled the scene as Jimmy came in, even with the chair. But maybe they just felt like the point had been made, so I won't hit too hard on that. But I kind of felt like Jimmy was on the road to doing something in the singles regime on his own. So I'm okay with the Usos getting back together, but it did feel like he was finally picking up some traction on his own. But regardless, we'll wait and see. But yeah, very interesting, very news, story driven episode of Raw, and a little bit of some things kind of rinse and repeat, but very much new development. So that was great to see. And yeah, very good episode for Raw overall from me. And I would give this one a 8 out of 10.
Looks like we're on the same wavelength there. I also gave this one an 8 out of 10. I think that just a load of things, ultimately just made the decision quite easy. The crowd being so hot, getting a championship match as well, some really cool interactions as well throughout the show, story progression, bits here and there. Yeah, I think it just ultimately was a really solid episode of Raw, and yeah, just encapsulated a really enjoyable weekend over in France, obviously with the Lyon crowd over in SmackDown, and then Paris taking the stage for Clash in Paris and Raw. Yeah, it was a fun weekend, and now we get to go back to the United States with the US crowd. We're going to go to Chicago, which are known for being pretty good, so hopefully they can fill in decently after we get back over there. But for this episode of The Push with Nick and KP, that's basically us done here today with our Raw recap. If you enjoy this one, then please let us know in the comments what you're making of it all, whether you agree or disagree with anything that we're saying. And please feel free to hit a like on the video and subscribe to our channel to keep up with further releases coming up very, very soon. Ultimately, we've got our recaps coming along as well as other little things planned as well. But for now, everybody, this has been The Push, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, and goodbye for now.